Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Education Ministry reassessing violence prevention programs in schools. Concerns over mandatory minimum sentences for children. And later in sports, semi-final matchups to be decided in Jamaica Premier League today. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. Taxi operators in Sligoville, St. Catherine are desperately searching for one of their colleagues, Rashane Wilkins, who has been missing since Friday. So far, the burnt remnants of a motor car believed to have been driven by Mr. Wilkins was found in the area. We were told Mr. Wilkins got a call for a charter to the airport on Friday, but he has not been seen or heard from since. Residents believe the taxi operator may have been killed based on other items which were found on the scene. The incident comes days after a taxi operator was shot and killed in Linson, St. Catherine. Now we will have more on this story in Primetime News at 7. The Education Ministry says it is reassessing the effectiveness of violence prevention programs in schools. This amid recent incidents which have turned deadly. Now, the Education Minister, Favour Williams, made the disclosure on Power 106's morning agenda on Monday. Shamela Pullen reports.
Incidents of violence continue to plague schools across the country, and Education Minister Favour Williams says she's more concerned now than before.
In our schools, we have a number of different initiatives across the school, reaching different children. Many and different initiatives, and I think it's about time that we do an assessment of all of them to determine the effectiveness. And for those that are working well, let us take it to other schools. Not all the schools in Jamaica have access to all the different programs that we sometimes talk about.
Mrs. Williams says when students demonstrate acts of violence, there are provisions for them to get between 3 to 10 sessions of counseling by an expert.
If the teacher feels that whatever is happening is beyond their capability, they can refer that child to the guidance counselor, to the dean of discipline, and even at that level, if they feel that the problem at hand is still above what they are able to manage, we do have a roster of psychologists, psychiatrists to whom children and their parents can be referred for sessions.
There have been calls, too, for the Minister of Education to bring back the Peace and Love Pals program in schools. Mrs. Williams says this has been explored.
I've already asked my office to reach out to those persons leading that program to come in, educate me on that program, let me understand the cost of that program, because none of these programs come without a cost associated with them. So we can understand what would be required of us if this is something we reintroduce into the schools, or I should say introduced in a bigger way.
Shamela Pullen, TVJ News.
An appeal this afternoon for legislators to be cautious against using draconian measures for juvenile offenders. The warning comes as Parliament looks at the Criminal Justice Administration Act, the Offences Against a Persons Act, and the Child Care and Protection Act. Don't use one brush to paint them all. That's the view of clinical psychiatrist Dr. Jeffrey Walcott and attorney Nicole Gordon. It comes as legislators are looking at making amendments to 3 companion bills: the Criminal Justice Administration Act, the Offences Against a Persons Act, and the Child Care and Protection Act. The mandatory minimum being proposed for children involved in murders is 20 years. But clinical psychiatrist Dr. Jeffrey Walcott is cautioning against draconian measures against juvenile offenders. He says some children will likely make poor decisions as the brain is not fully developed until about age 25. Hence, he's suggesting the government take into consideration the stage of a child's development and capacity to understand the nature of the acts committed.
Brain development does not just happen at once. It happens over time, and it's usually completed by age 25. The last area of the brain that develops is what we call the prefrontal cortex. That's the area that's responsible for judgment, for your actual navigation of the social spaces. So it's what gives you your ability to determine right from wrong, and it's what gives you your ability to actually be able to respond appropriately and autonomously in the society. So if you think about it then, adolescence by definition, which is a stage at which you're becoming an adult, doesn't really end until age 25 when the brain is fully developed. And it is that aspect of the brain that helps us to hone our moral understanding of the world and our engagement and our place in it.
Attorney Nicole Gordon says children who break the law should be treated differently from adults.
We know, for example, that the social and environmental factors make children more vulnerable than adults. So we have to consider that, and we have to treat children differently. When I think about it, or I say to myself, what on earth is a 14-year-old doing with a gun? The only reason that a 14-year-old has a gun is because we as society, we have failed that 14-year-old. It is because the family structures have gone down, the educational structures are not what they're supposed to be, and certain social systems that are supposed to be in place do not exist. Now, when we put that child in jail for 50 years, and we do not have a system of rehabilitation and reintegration, what are we doing to our society?
Member of Parliament for South St. James, Homer Davis, wants school administrators to play a greater role in determining which students should be included on the Program of Advancement through Health and Education path. Now, he made the recommendation at the latest PATH Town Hall meeting. More in this report.
Some of the children who are beneficiary of the PATH program don't really need it.
Homer Davis, the Member of Parliament for St. James Southern. He was speaking at the latest PATH Town Hall in St. James. Mr. Davis says this was observed after a number of visits to several schools within his constituency. It is why he is calling for greater collaboration between school principals and the Ministry of Labour and Social Security to ascertain those students who are in dire need and would need the assistance of the program.
In the review, feeding our young ones must be high on the agenda. And what Mr. Archer said about, what is happening, yes, we need to, if we feed our nation, starting from the children, then the desired results that we are looking, we will eventually get those results.
Labour and Social Security Minister Pernell Charles Jr. says the issue raised was not lost on his team at the ministry and will be urgently looked at.
After we finish the town halls, we're going to have specific engagements with the Ministry of Education and Youth and other ministry partners to make sure that we design the options on what that collaboration can be, or the new dimension of that collaboration, because there is collaboration now. There is intersection between the two.
Mr. Charles Jr. hastened to point out that there are recommendations from teachers and principals which are taken into consideration. However,
teachers may only see one angle of a student and think that student shouldn't be on path. But the social worker is going to be doing a much more comprehensive investigation. Sometimes the teachers get it completely right, and we may not. So that's where the collaboration is important, to make sure that we're looking on all of the different angles of the student at the school, of our investigations in the community, to come up with the best result and the best outcome. So we definitely take that, and we intend for that to be a part of our review going forward.
Kerry Simpson, TVJ News.
And it's time for a break here on the Midday News. Stay with us, more stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. Leave the title of Justice of the Peace and do the work. That assertion from Custos of St. Anne, Norma Walters. Addressing the St. Anne Justices of the Peace Association at their 39th annual general meeting recently, she charged the JPs to ensure they give the service required without imposing charges. Mrs. Walters also stressed the need for JPs to maintain the standard of excellence.
As leaders in your community, again, you set the standards for excellence, and you must adhere and strive to be your very best selves. And I know St. Anne has a spot on its face because we do have one of our JPs up for criminal charge, and saying when we commission JPs, We see you, we take the time for who you are, and we encourage you at general meetings like this to go for excellence. But we cannot say what changes you've taken and why you've taken them.
She also highlighted the significant increase in major crimes across the parish and encouraged the JPs to do whatever they can to help reduce the crime rate.
We have to work. We have work to do. Work not only to support our crime fighters, but as unselfish and dedicated citizens to devote our lives to uplifting the lives of others. So once more, we must proceed with determination and collective will. Each of us matter, each and every one of us. And everyone must work. And we remember that the saying that we are as strong as our weakest link.
Urological services at the Mandeville Regional Hospital has been boosted. This with the purchase of a stone punch machine among other equipment. The stone punch is used to crush stones in the bladder, eliminating the need for surgery and therefore reducing the post-surgery time in hospital from 7 days to 1 day. Now, it will also reduce the risk of infections sometimes associated with surgery. Dr. Karen Jones is consultant urologist at the Mandeville Regional Hospital.
One of the things, if it's not just patients, beside the cost to the hospital or the benefits to the hospital, the amount of patient satisfaction with this is absolutely amazing. One of the things we've fretted about with cutting patients for bladder stones is that the risk of infection, wound infections, and more prolonged hospital stay beyond the 5 days, it's 7 days, a week, and it's not very pleasant infection, a very pleasant infection. This just removes all of that. I think, beyond trying to get other patients to come in to look after urology, if we can clean up what we have now, and just freshen up the slate, then we'll be in a good position to start doing preventive work, prostatic care, and so forth.
The hospital sees patients from St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, St. Anne, and Trelawney, in addition to those from Manchester. And it's now time for the Business Minute. Educom Cooperative Credit Union is to merge with Gateway Credit Union. Members of Educom voted to accept the move after months of discussions and due diligence. The members of Gateway Credit Union voted for the merger on April 18. Now it's expected that the amalgamation will be finalized by the end of the year to officially merge by January 1, 2025. The merged entity will operate under a new name to be determined by a competition among members. The combined assets amount to more than 28 billion Jamaican dollars and will operate from 13 locations. Further afield, inflation remained stubbornly high last month in the U.S., but it hasn't stopped Americans from spending. According to data released by the U.S. Commerce Department, inflation rose faster than expected last month. The Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index rose to 2.7% for the year ending in March. The rate was above economists' expectations for a 2.6% gain and also landed above February's reading of 2.5%. And that's it for the Business Minute. Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, Haitian rapper Wyclef Jean says he's hopeful that the installation of a transitional presidential council will help to pivot the nation away from past destructive practices. In a post on his social media account X, the foreign-based musician said the council offers an opportunity to finally listen to and address the needs of the Haitian population, especially the most vulnerable. Haiti has been steeped in political turmoil and social unrest following the assassination of President Juvenile on July 7 in 2021. On the international scene, Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has said he will stay on as Spain's leader following 5 days of speculation over his future. Mr. Sanchez cancelled official engagements last week after a court opened an initial inquiry into his wife over corruption claims. He denounced them as a harassment campaign by right-wing media. Mr. Sanchez said he decided to stay on following expressions of solidarity from all sections of society. It comes following a series of demonstrations over the weekend calling for the Prime Minister to continue in his post. And the death toll from flooding in Kenya has risen to 103. The Red Cross Society of Kenya said 23 people had been rescued and others were missing after a boat capsized at Kunaponda on Sunday. Due to the extreme flooding, the Ministry of Education announced Monday that all primary and secondary schools would postpone second-term opening for 1 week until May 6. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Amoy Harriet.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, Giovanni Dennis will have your midday sports report.